this is Gwen and welcome to my channel where I share my passion for sewing, knitting, all sorts of DIY as I work towards making a handmade wardrobe with the vision of a cohesive and consistent style. Basically, I love it when things go together like this, and this. This week, I'm back with another great beginner-friendly stash bustin' project. So this is the last video of the whole series where I've been working with this blue yarn. If you've seen one of my previous videos where I show you how to add a scalloped edge to this crop top, you'll also notice that my scalloped edge is now a ruffle edge. It's bigger, it's fluffier. I just thought, maybe the scalloped edge is too dainty. Maybe I want something more dramatic. And also I had still quite a little bit of yarn to play with, so I decided to add another row of crochet to make it real ruffles. And here it is. If you're interested, I don't think I'm posting another video on YouTube on how to make this, but I actually got the pattern on my Instagram post. I will put a link of that in the description box. And after making the ruffles bigger, I still have quite a little bit of yarn left. It's so little, I just didn't think I could do anything with it, and I just don't want it lying around the house and not doing anything for me. I need to tie my hair up. I need a scrunchie. I've got elastic lying around. I'll make a scrunchie. And once again, this is a great beginner project. If you know how to knit, if you know how to purl, you can make this. If you know how to knit a rectangle, you can make this. If you don't know how to knit, you can learn to knit and make this. So enough of this yakety yak. Let's get started. So here's the elastic that I'm using. I actually bought this elastic to make reusable fabric masks. So it's not really hair elastic, but I think it's good enough. And here's the last remaining bits of yarn that I have left after knitting the top, adding the ruffles, making the retro headband, and I really want to finish using it. I can't quite tell you where to get it because it's a dead stock Japanese yarn, and I'm really not gonna do anything else with it, so I just really want to finish it up. So first we're going to start with getting the elastic. I'm using my wrist as a reference as to how long I want my elastic to be, because I probably would wear my scrunchie on my wrist quite a lot. So I want it to go around my wrist and have it a little longer to accommodate for the knot. Because this elastic is pretty thin and I wanted to make sure that I'll have enough tension to use it as a hair tie, I decided to use 2 strands of the elastic. You might find yourself needing just 1 strand of elastic if you're using proper hair tie elastic. And now we're going to start doing some knitting. Cast on to get a width of 4 inches. For reference, with my fingering weight yarn and my 3.5mm knitting needles, I casted on 20 stitches to get about 4 inches. We're basically knitting a really long rectangle. The final width of the scrunchie is actually half of what we're starting out with. So the scrunchie that I ended up with is actually 2 inches wide. So bear that in mind because you might have to do a little bit of math to decide how many stitches you want to cast on. And it all really depends on the yarn that you're using, the needles that you're using, and your knitting tension. We're knitting in stockinette stitch for this pattern. For the first row, knit all the stitches. For the second row, knit the first stitch, purl all the other stitches until you have 1 stitch remaining, and knit the last stitch. And then we're just gonna keep knitting in the same pattern. I told you, it's really easy. So keep knitting until you get the length of rectangle that you want. A good rule of thumb is to have the rectangle at least twice as long as your elastic. If you want a scrunchie that looks more poofy, then you might want to knit your rectangle at least 2.5 times or 3 times longer than your elastic. Once you've gotten the right length of rectangle, or once you realize that you're almost out of yarn and you can't keep knitting, then bind off and remember to leave a yarn tail that is slightly longer than the length of the knitted rectangle, because we're going to be using the yarn tail to sew the scrunchie up together. And now we're going to do a little bit of sewing. Using your tapestry needle and the yarn tail, stitch the long sides of the rectangle together. I usually like to use the matcher stitch because it gives the cleanest finish. This sewing takes a while, to be honest, but you'll get there. And when you're done with that, you end up with a little tube. There you go, that's a tube. Now we're here at the final step. I must admit that this step was actually much trickier than I thought. I actually tried a few different ways to try to thread the elastic through the tube, and this was my first attempt. It didn't work quite well with just fingers. And then I tried using a crochet hook. Didn't quite work either. But from my multiple attempts, what I found out was that the best way to do it is to hold one end of the elastic down. What I'm doing here is using a Pyrex ball, but I reckon if you have a bulldog clip and then if you were to clip the elastic ends to the tube, to one end of the tube, and then having the other end attached to a safety pin and then slowly threading it through that way, that's probably the best way. And the thing is, when I was trying to thread the elastic through the tube the first time, the knot came undone halfway through and I had to do it again the second time, and this makes the fourth attempt of me trying to thread the elastic through, and I finally got it done the fourth time round. So now, very carefully, undo the knot and don't lose that end of the elastic strand, because we're going to take both ends of the elastic together and tie them together in a knot. Trim the tail of the elastic because you don't want them sticking out of your knitted scrunchie. And right now, I hope you still have a little bit of the yarn tail left, because we're going to be using our tapestry needle again, and then we're going to take the remaining bit of the yarn tail and stitch the short edges together to seal the scrunchie. When you're done with sewing the short edges together, you can either tie a knot or put a dab of glue. What I like to do is to weave in the ends and hide the rest of the tail in the scrunchie, and then cut off anything that's really excess. I like it this way because, I don't know, I just think it's neater. And there you go! Congratulations and well done, you've got your own knitted scrunchie. Thank you for watching. I hope you found the tutorial useful and you'll be inspired to go hunt for the little bits and pieces of yarn that you've got left to make your own scrunchie. Stay tuned for the next video because the next video is going to be a refashion project. Ding ding ding!